a bunch of folks logging in, so thank you for joining. We're also really excited about this topic today. So as you join, if you can please mute your phone line as you log in and arrive. And we will take questions in the chat. Vanessa, or Dr. Vanessa Clark will be our moderator. And so any questions submitted through the chat, she will pose those to our speaker at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in there. And also feel free to introduce yourself in the chat as well. So let's get started. So my name is Amanda Keemer. I am the Vice President of Cybersecurity at the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. I work with everyone in our K-12 space, higher education, startups, industry, anything that touches cybersecurity throughout our ecosystem. We're really excited to have Women in Cybersecurity San Antonio affiliate group, particularly because we know there's a need for us to learn more in this space, to be more visible, and to strengthen our technical skills. And so we have Ashley Pearson with us today, and we're super psyched because we wanted to provide information on how to strengthen technical skills. And one of the questions we received from members and other women in cybersecurity is, how do we participate in capture the flag competitions? What are some things that we need to know? What's the strategy behind the competitions? How do we win? And so we thought this would be a great first technical presentation. So today we have with us Ashley. So Ashley is a former system admin turned cybersecurity professional. She has been active duty Air Force for almost 8 years. So thank you for your service, Ashley. She's a huge DFIR nerd, so she'll explain to us what that means. And she's also currently a threat hunter at the Air Force CERT. And if you're following along on Twitter or want to tweet out via social media, Ashley's handle is ON as in Nancy, FVP, and we'll throw that in the chat. And our handle is at WiCyS San Antonio. So without further ado, Ashley, I will hand it over to you. Thanks for being with us.
And I appreciate it. So like Amanda just said, I'm going to give a Capture the Flag 101, kind of introduce everyone to the concept of capture the flags. As far as DFIR goes, it's digital forensics, incident response. It kind of is just become this big umbrella term for all the different facets of information security, right? But for this one specifically, we'll just get into capture the flag exercises and what to do, what they are, some of the basics, and then how you can hone your skills so you can participate in this and grow as a professional in the field. Just because I am our Air Force and I am in the DoD, I'm going to kind of leave this up for a second. This is the typical disclaimer that these opinions are my own. I am going to introduce some capture the flag exercises I have participated in, introduce you to some new tools, show you guys some of the different categories and stuff you can participate in. And I do have a lot of personal opinions. I just wanted to throw it out here. Those are mine. That's not the Air Force saying, hey, these are amazing and you should definitely use these. So just wanted to get that one out of the way. Amanda already kind of introduced me, but I am active duty Air Force. I have been in almost 8 years. I think it'll be July, so that I had 8 years officially. I was a system administrator. I worked on servers. I did vulnerability management. I did kind of a little bit of everything. I think anyone who's done system administration or help desk before knows that you might have one idea of what the job is, but you end up kind of doing anything that they think that you might be able to do. So I've done a little bit of everything. I did that for 4.5 years before I retrained in the Air Force, so you can actually change your job at a certain point while you're in the military. When I did that, I cross-trained into what people refer to as cyber warfare operator. It sounds pretty cool. Basically, I guess the nicest way to say it is the DFIR nerd that I said before, but I do cyber threat hunting, which is basically proactively looking for malicious activity on the network, things that escape some of the IDS sensors or detection mechanisms that happen within the networks. So I'm on the team that goes out and finds all the people who are trying to get around those defenses. And currently right now I work at the Air Force Computer Emergency and Response Team. I've been there for about 3 years now. I think I'm coming up quick on 3 years if I haven't already passed it, to be honest, and time has really flown by. I feel like in that position, it's a lot of training to catch up and learn kind of everything there is to know. For you guys, I know Amanda already said it. I have my Twitter handle here on the bottom, and I've got my LinkedIn information as well if you guys are curious. I also have my website on there. Fair warning if you do go, it is very new. It's a project I took on during the COVID situation that we've got going on. So it's not a lot of action, but I do have resources listed on there that I won't have time to touch on today, but if you're curious, they are there. As far as CTF experience goes, just to start off with, I guess the most notable one, I have participated in quite a few OpenSOC CTF challenges. Just to give you kind of a brief overview of OpenSOC, it was actually started by another 1v4 who's in the same career field that I am. He's just in the reserves. His name is Eric Capilano. He puts on kind of a live action security operations center experience where you go in and use some of the same tools that you might use if you sit in a security analyst position in a SOC. My team actually took first place at Texas Cyber Summit for that challenge that they hosted. And we did get black badges. I've got a little picture of part of the black badge that we got. And then during the stay-at-home effort for COVID, I actually participated in the Camp COVID challenge that they hosted as well. We were able to place top 5 in that one too. I put this one on here, but I want to caveat it by saying I very loosely participated in the Trace Labs Open Source Intelligence CTF. Open Source Intelligence was brand new to me. I wanted to check it out and see what they were about because they have a really good cause. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what they do later on, but I did participate in that one as well. And then with my career field comes participating in Air Force specific or DoD CTF challenges, either that are hosted DoD wide or sometimes some of the units that have my career field kind of put on their own CTFs. So I've participated in quite a few. I've done some of the DEF CON qualifier ones too, but that was when I was brand new to the field, and I'll be honest, they kind of went way over my head. So I might try to tackle those again now that I've got some experience under my belt, but largely this is kind of my CTF experience. So I just wanted to give a quick summary. So I am going to go into CTF definitions and introductions, kind of show you guys, some of the basic terminology that's used. That way it's not just like a fire hose of terms and jargon that no one knows. And then I'll go into the major event types that you can encounter if you participate in CTFs, as well as some of the topics and categories of questions that you might see if you participate. I'll give you guys some tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way for the CTFs that I've participated in, and then kind of give all of you some advice on how to keep your skills sharp. Again, both for CTFs you may participate in the future, but also a lot of these skills are applicable to your day-to-day work, especially if you work at a security operations center like I do. So, real quick, I know we've been throwing around CTF and capture the flag. This is just kind of a industry standard definition. It's basically a competition similar to capture the flag, the real game that you can play, where you participate with other students or professionals who are in the field. You're either going to be answering questions on different topics, or you're going to be competing against other teams to maintain control over different assets within an environment that you're participating in. There's a bunch of different flavors to CTFs. I'll get into some of the major ones here in a minute, but essentially it's just a learning opportunity to help you grow or sharpen new skills or existing skills that you might already have. The biggest question is who can participate. I know when I first retrained into this new job, a lot of the people that retrained had been interested in all of these different fields for such a long time, and they were relatively new to me. So I heard some of them participating in these competitions, and I had no idea what they were talking about. It seemed to me at the time that, how am I ever going to learn enough to be able to be useful in these competitions? And they seem so daunting sometimes, especially if you see, like, look at these competitions here. I mean, these are qualifier matches, and they're so serious, and everyone kind of looks like it's just it's going to be way over your head, especially for, if you don't have a lot of experience in some of these fields. But to be honest, CTFs are so ubiquitous now, and so many different companies participate that there are so many different levels. So really anyone can participate in CTFs. There are category-specific ones that deep dive into different things like memory analysis. There are really, really intense versions of CTFs that you can participate in too, but realistically, there is a CTF style for everyone, and anyone can participate. Doesn't matter what your skill level is. If anything, I would encourage beginners to participate in these, just because you learn so many different skill sets. You're introduced to so many topics. It'll help you figure out what you're interested in too, for sure. That is to caveat that by saying right now, this is more what, at least this is what I look like now during CTFs, now that we're not in buildings participating in a team. I'm kind of at home with everything scattered all over my desk, especially if it's a short-term competition and I'm really trying to answer as many questions as possible. My desk very quickly devolves into just chaos and different stacks that I've had throughout the week. So I touched on this a little bit ago with the definition, but there are basically two major types of CTFs that you can participate in. Specifically, attack and defense and Jeopardy. Those are definitely the two bigger categories for CTFs that I've seen. However, there are also things that don't fit into those two categories as nicely. So I threw in kind of that mix and miscellaneous style for CTFs as well. So we'll start with attack and defense. This one, I don't know how many of you have played King of the Hill growing up, but kind of the name speaks for itself. You are either on a red team or blue team, red team being the attacker side or the pen testers, or you're on a blue team typically, which is more defensive. That's more where my specific job fits in. And you are either trying to gain access to another team's system, or you are trying to protect systems that you are guarded with protecting, right? So this one, you get points depending on how many systems or services you have gained access to. I put an example down here, Panoply. I personally haven't participated in this one, so I don't have a lot of experience with the attack and defense CTFs. I do have a lot of coworkers who have participated, and they all really like this style. So I think it just varies from person to person. But essentially, this one is definitely team-based. You are fighting, against other teams while you're participating in this style CTF. The other major one, this is my personal favorite type of CTF, is Jeopardy style. These are puzzles. So you are presented with a problem, and they say, all right, here's what the problem is. If you can solve this problem, you're going to unlock a flag, basically, that you will enter into answer, and that will determine whether or not you solve their puzzle in the way that you're supposed to. These ones have a lot of flexibility. You can participate solo. There are team options in a lot of them. I think these ones are a lot of fun. They typically have, it just depends on who's hosting it, to be honest, anywhere from like 5 to 10 different categories for these ones. But these ones are a lot of fun. I will say for both of these options, typically for CTFs, they're time-based objectives. So you'll either have 1 or 2 weeks of CTF for these competitions. It just kind of depends. I've seen some that are a month long. I've seen some that are only a couple days. So it really just depends on who's hosting it and what the objective is for the competition. So this miscellaneous category that I talked about, I talked about Trace Labs earlier. So they are crowdsourcing open source intelligence. This one, I want to say it fits into the CTF category relatively loosely if you look at the other 2 categories I was telling you guys about, but they literally provide you with a missing persons report. and then you need to go out and use any open source website, Google, Facebook, social media platforms. There are a bunch of other options you can use too, where, sorry about that. You go out, you use all those different platforms, and you try to find as much information as possible. The quote unquote flags that you're turning in are actual pieces of intelligence that you've gathered on these missing persons. So that's where the crowdsourcing comes in. They take all of that information and provide it to law enforcement to assist with those missing person cases. There are long-term / wargaming options as well. I threw over the wire here as an example. These ones basically stay available to the public for forever. There's no time limit on them. They're kind of just out there for practice and for developing new skills. I have some more information on over the wire specifically a little bit later too. And then as far as pen testing goes, Hack the Box, I have a lot of friends who participate in Hack the Box. That one is geared more towards pen testing and red teaming. So you're actually going in and identifying and submitting vulnerability reports with that one. It might not be an actual traditional CTF example, but the skills that you learn in any one of these things apply to a capture the flag competition that you might participate in. Sure. So I mentioned that Jeopardy style CTFs are my personal favorite style. So a lot of the examples I'm going to give are from Jeopardy style CTFs. Although I will say you can see a lot of these topics even if you participate in the other styles that I mentioned as well. They might not just be as blatantly labeled, but the skill sets still apply regardless. A lot of the major topics and categories you might see are cryptography or encryption. So, you know, base 64 encoded things or scrambled messages that you have to figure out how they scrambled it to unscramble it. Steganography is another big one. Hidden information in different text documents or pictures. Those are really popular. Reverse engineering is gaining popularity. I've seen a lot of reverse engineering things, and that varies anywhere from like beginner reverse engineering all the way up to, there were some that I was watching some of the guys that I worked with work on, and I have no idea how they did it. Even after explaining it to me, couldn't tell you, but reverse engineering is really popular in CTFs nowadays. Memory analysis, this is one of my personal favorite categories for CTFs. This is also gaining popularity, especially with some of the new tool sets that are being developed and updated. I mentioned open source intelligence gathering. Those are pretty popular too, especially with trace labs and other, I've seen some smaller scale ones where they show you a picture and you have to figure out, hey, where was this picture taken or what hotel and what's the address. I've seen some of those too. Traffic analysis is also pretty popular, and that category alone has so many different things. That's definitely one of my personal weaker areas in CTFs, but you can hide so much stuff in traffic. Like they'll give you a little snippet of some traffic that occurred on a network and say, hey, we hit a message in here. You need to dig through here and figure out what the hidden message is. So these are just some of the categories I've seen pop up frequently based on my experience. Again, it just depends on who's hosting it. There could be 100 more topics too, and they don't necessarily all have to be in one CTF. You can have one revolved around like one of these topics for sure. The nice thing about it is, you know, I mentioned traffic analysis isn't my strongest suit, but it's practice. So I get to go in and play around with stuff that I don't necessarily get to see on a daily basis. So I'm exposing myself to new tool sets, new methods for hiding bad actors on the network, new operating systems. It's one of the best ways to get experience in a bunch of different things that you might not get to see on a daily basis. So this is kind of, let's say you signed up for your first CTF, you sign into the website that they provide you. This platform right here I've seen used by quite a few different CTFs I've done recently. This is called CTFB. This is kind of what you're going to see right here on the left. So your scoreboard right here, this shows you, as soon as you log in, it gives you a little snippet, right, of the points that you and other teams have earned over time. If you are curious to know where you're standing in the competition, I know me, I keep this open in another tab, and depending on how serious I am about the competition, I'll sit and refresh it every once in a while so I can see it. But it's kind of cool to see your own statistics too if you're interested in it. You can see, like, you know, did you shoot up rapidly and get a bunch of points and then kind of burn out over time, and how close you are to catching other teams in the competition. These are some examples of some of the different topics that I mentioned earlier. You can see here, this is the challenges board. So you've got exploitation, forensics, networking in this example one. All these different boxes are the different questions that you can answer. The green ones highlight once you've answered them correctly. It shows you how many points each question is worth. It shows you the category of the question and kind of the title, because sometimes they have the on here. So it provides you with a lot of information right off the bat. I know not all CTFs are going to use this platform, but like I said, this one's pretty common. It's gaining popularity for sure. It's super easy to set up. We were kind of messing around with it at work recently. It's super easy to use. Everything's labeled, but this is kind of what you're going to see when you log in for your CTF. I mentioned earlier too, I'm very into statistics. So that same platform provides you with team and individual statistics as you progress in the CTF. So on the left here, you can see your, again, this will do it for your whole team, and it'll do it for you as an individual if you're curious. It'll show you how many failed attempts you've had to get some of the flags, and it will also show you how many successful attempts you've had to answer the flags. I will say, speaking from experience, this specific table is very humbling. Some people, a couple of my friends are really into spam answering things, so they'll just rapid fire. If they think that they have it, they'll rapid fire answers in here. And one of the things that we like to do in our friend group is give each other a hard time if you've got like a 90% fail rate with like a 10% success. Those categories that I mentioned earlier too, it'll actually give you a breakdown of how many questions you have answered in each of the categories that that specific CTF has, which is really interesting. Like I said, it'll show you a whole bunch of information, and you don't have to be an admin to see this. Once you sign up, you can just click a little hyperlink of your username, and it'll display all of this information for you. I like taking a look at it so I can see what areas I tend to favor during the CTF. Typically for me, it's the memory analysis ones. I really enjoy those questions. So these are just kind of some different things that you might see if you're participating in here. But like I said, it's pretty easy to use. These are more for fun statistics than anything. So that's a lot to take in if you've never done a CTF before. So I've kind of shown you guys what a CTF is, the different kinds you can see. There are a lot of different kinds, and it can seem overwhelming, but for the most part, you'll see those two major types that I showed you. Jeopardy is very popular. A lot of them are Jeopardy style CTFs. But now I wanted to get you guys some examples of different tools that you might see, and then I've even got some example questions too, so we can go through and I'll show you some of the things that I've worked on. So I've talked about memory analysis a lot. Typically, memory forensics and memory analysis is looking at a memory or process dump of a process running on a computer. Usually, it depends on what your job is. Sometimes I get to do this, sometimes I don't. I'll be honest, most of the time you encounter this during CTFs. But it's just a type of forensics that you can perform on a computer. Volatility specifically is just one of the really popular tools for performing memory analysis, but there are other ones that exist. I prefer volatility. I think it's just one of those situations where, you know, you learn a tool and then you kind of favor it unless something really wows you with another tool. So I personally really like volatility. It's super easy to use. There are 1,001 different cheat sheets and scenarios online to help you kind of figure out the syntax for it. But if you've used any command line in your job or in your free time, it's super easy to pick up. Which brings me to one of the first not practice questions, but just introductory questions. So you've logged into your CTF, you went to the challenge dashboard, and you clicked on memory analysis questions because someone showed you a presentation and said that memory analysis questions are their favorite. And you're like, let me see what she's talking about. So you click on the question and it pops up. Right off the bat, we can see this is on the category memory analysis. It's worth 50 points. And this is the question. I kind of shorthanded this question here. It's just asking what is the correct volatility profile for this image. However, I will say during a CTF, especially for the first question in a category, they will typically be much more robust with what they provide. So they will show you, they'll either provide a link to like a Google Drive or something where you can download the image that they're going to ask you questions on, or they will provide you with credentials to log in somewhere so you can access it. The last one that I did, it was actually like you had to SSH into a server that they had where they were hosting everything so you could use their platform to run the commands. But for this one right here, assuming that you already have the memory image and everything, this one's pretty easy. I guess that's kind of relative depending on experience, but this is just a introduction question, right? So the correct volatility profile. So we'll run the following commands up here. Like I said, it seems like a lot. I know the first time one of the guys ever showed me this, I didn't have a lot of experience with Python. I didn't have a lot of experience with volatility or anything, but so you'll run this to get some information on the image that they provided you, which gives you this output. So this gives you a whole bunch of information on the memory image, right? It gives you the different profile options right here. It gives you all of this stuff down here too, what time and date the image was taken. But if we go back to the question that they're asking, what's the correct volatility profile? Well, thankfully, volatility gives it to you as one of the first options after you run that command. I will say, if you don't have a lot of experience with volatility, the chances of the profile being the first one that's listed are pretty low, but they normally only give you a handful to go with, so you can kind of test around and see which one works. And in this case, the flag was that profile that we identified earlier. Just a quick note on the flag here. In this instance, notice that the flag is literally just you copying over the profile that they identified earlier. Normally, they'll tell you what format they want the flag in. So they'll either say you need to type out the word flag and put some brackets around it with the information that they're requesting. They normally tell you that ahead of time. So if they don't want anything special, normally you can just enter in whatever the actual answer to the question is. But in this instance, they just wanted to know what the volatility profile was. And congrats to us, we got our first CTF question correct, which unlocked question 2 in that same category. One of the things about the Jeopardy style CTFs is typically they are a tiered approach. So they don't just give you every question most of the time for every category. Instead, you're kind of unlocking different levels as you go along, right? So you'll answer 1 or 2 questions in a category, and then it kind of creates a cascading effect. Sometimes they'll unlock 2 or 3 questions. Sometimes they'll unlock 1 or 2, but in this instance, the answer to the second question that I have up is dependent upon the answer that you got to the first one. So it unlocks the second level for you. And I wouldn't necessarily focus on the exact questions. This is just kind of showing you the type of information that they can provide to you if you participate in a CTF. as well as what the platform looks like. I guess I kind of took some of these from more of a threat hunting and incident response CTF that I've done recently, but this is just to kind of give you an idea of what the platform itself looks like and the different types of information you can get from a CTF that you participate in. But for the second one here, oops, sorry about that, it is asking you, hey, there are a lot of processes running on this computer. Which one of these is not like the other things, and which one should we take a closer look at? We're going to run a follow-up question that contains that profile that we found in the last CTF question right here, that in XP that we found, and we're going to get a process listing since it is asking us for which of the processes does not belong. That provides you with all of this beautiful wall of text. I bet everyone likes seeing that on the command prompt. So we have a bunch of processes here. And we'll highlight just real quick. So you're going to highlight this one after some analysis. Maybe you're going through and you're Googling, like, what are some normal Windows processes? I know SANS has a bunch of free posters on knowing normal and finding evil. I use those all the time to help me because I can never keep some of these ones up at the top straight. Everyone uses cheat sheets. There's nothing wrong with a nice cheat sheet every once in a while. But once you isolate the process that you think is wrong, this is again going to come down to playstyle, right? Some people are just going to spam away that answer until they get one right. But once you've identified it, you enter it into that little flag location that I mentioned earlier. So you're going to enter that process that you identified, and then it may unlock more. The status part of the CTF is once you're on a roll and you're answering questions and you're like, this is awesome, I'm like killing the CTF, like this is awesome. And then they run out of questions in the category, so then you have to go work on some of the sections that maybe aren't your favorite. I know I save all the ones that I don't like doing for last. Kind of like when a little kid saves all the broccoli on the plate for last. I definitely do that with CTF challenges. I would like to think other people do it. Like I said, I know I do it, but we'll move away from the memory analysis stuff. That was just kind of to show some examples of the questions and the point values and stuff and the different types of flag formats you might see. I know I mentioned steganography, so you can hide messages in pictures. There's 1,000 different ways to do it. I don't even know the surface to it. I pretty much only use steganography for CTFs. So the whole time that I'm doing it, I have like 50 tabs open on my browser. And I'm just furiously Googling, like, how can you hide stuff? How can you take it out? I have to reteach myself different steganography things pretty much every time I do a CTF. Which is kind of nice because it's learning something new, which I really like, but also it's just one of those skills that I don't get to flex a lot. I put some examples on here. It's basically just hiding things either in text or images or other files. So here's another example, right? So that same question that we had before, now you'll notice this one must be a little bit harder because this one's worth 150 points. Typically, that's how I gauge, I guess, how frustrated I'll probably be when I'm working on that question. This one's worth 150 points. I'll probably save this one for last to work on it if I've got leftover time from the other ones that I am more confident in doing. This was one of the ones that we had on a CTF that we did recently. You'll also notice down here, they will normally, on some questions, especially the difficult ones, give you a hint that you can unlock for a certain number of points. So if you're stuck, like looking at this one, since this is one that we actually worked on recently, my team looked at this Word document for, I think, like 2 weeks straight. Because typically when you think steganography, you think hiding something in a picture, right? So we sat and looked at this Word document, trying to figure out what in the world could they possibly be telling us for yeah, like 2 weeks, I think. And we were going back and forth. Googling just random CTF write-ups to see if anyone had seen anything like this in the past. So this was definitely a head scratcher for us. We ended up taking a hint. I think the hint, depending on how much the hint costs you, they can provide you with a lot of information or a little bit of information. So that would just be something that you would need to think about when you're participating in the CTF later. This one in particular, again, this was just a funny example, mostly because you just look at this and you're like, what kind of terrible person came up with this question? I wonder, like, I really want to sit down with them and like see what's going through their head, you know? So I think we ended up doing that after we got done with this one. But eventually, after much Googling and late nights, you find one random article outlining some atypical type of steganography, which is exactly what happened, that says, hey, sometimes you don't have to hide text and pictures. You can change the case of each letter, and that will either be a 1 or a 0, depending on if it's capital or lowercase. And I was like, looking at it, and there's no way that that's what it is. And I do not know how to program, so I'm not lying. I sat there with a pen and paper, and I looked at each letter, and I wrote down on my pen and paper if it was capital or lowercase. Lowercase would be a 0 on there, and uppercase would be a 1. So these actually translate into 0s and 1s that you can then translate from binary to letters. And I'll show you what that means here in a second. That way I'm not just speaking partial time. But there's this tool called CyberChef. If you've never heard of it, it helps you build recipes, you know, to decode certain messages. You can use this a lot in the cryptography realm. I don't know how to do any of this by hand, so there's a nice website that'll do it all for me, which is really nice because I couldn't imagine doing this by hand myself, except for the fact that I had to write down all these 1s and 0s with my pen and then type them up into a notepad on my computer, since I don't know how to program that stuff. But this is what I was talking about. Each of those letters in that sentence translates into 0s and 1s, which to me kind of looks like robot talk, but I can just throw in here, hey, please convert this from binary for me, and it will. And then it pops up with this nice little flag for you. And I mentioned this earlier, but sometimes the flags that the CTF providers want will come in different formats. These guys, this is a pretty typical flag format actually. They'll normally literally have the word flag, and then they'll put these nice little curly braces with a secret message in there. So this was our secret message, and that was the flag for that challenge. That one, I'm going to be honest, I shared it because I thought it was super weird, so I hope you guys think it's just as weird and interesting as I did. I had never seen that before. Again, I wish I could sit down with the person who wrote that and be like, where did you even get this idea? I've never heard of it. I thought it was super interesting. But to break away from the super niche questions that I brought up earlier, I wanted to bring over the wire into the mix and show you guys one of the more long-term running CTFs and practice ranges. I know Windows is really popular. I use Windows as my daily workstation thing, and Windows is ubiquitous. Pretty much everyone uses Windows. So coming into my new career field, I had pretty much no experience using any other operating system besides basic commands that you can learn in school, right? So Over the Wire has a lot of different types of challenges that you can participate in. It's not a stereotypical CTF, even though it does have the same format where you unlock different tiers depending on the previous tier, right? These challenges have a bunch of different categories. They touch on pretty much all the categories I introduced earlier for CTFs in general, but they do have cryptography, Linux basics. That one was one of the first things that I did on Over the Wire when I first got into this new job. They have web security, programming, coding, hacking, pretty much anything in this career field. You name it, they have very, very, very intro practice challenges for all of those categories. So I come back here every once in a while and I do Bandit. That's the one up at the top here. This is kind of your intro to Linux. It teaches you all of the basic commands that you could use, and all of the commands that I learned in that challenge I have used in other CTFs, because they're even the most basic commands, you can just find so much information in it. So I highly, highly recommend checking out Over the Wire. Like I said, it's a perpetual challenge, so you can do it anytime on any free time that you have. It doesn't matter. And since I introduced cryptography earlier, they actually do have a set of cryptography challenges. I don't want to go too far into them because there's not a lot of them, so I don't want to just, here's all the answers to the cryptography challenge, you know. Plus, to be honest, I haven't done them before, so I don't know how hard they get, so I want to be able to do them in my free time. But this is just an example of kind of dipping your toes in the water with cryptography if you haven't had a lot of experience with it, in addition to just kind of introducing you to the Over the Wire challenge. So they're just, hey, base64 encoding. If you've never worked on it, you can go to that CyberChef website and enter this string in, and it'll pop out with this human readable string at the bottom there. Krypton is great, which is even better because we know that the name of the challenge is the Krypton challenge. Then they give you instructions after you get the flag on how to log in. They give you this command to enter, so they give you pretty much everything. They say you're going to SSH to this with this port and this username using the password that you just got from the challenge, and it'll give you this nice little welcome screen right after. Over the Wire is so great about walking you through things that some people take for granted because they do it every day, but for me, I had never SSH'd into anything. I had never done any of these Linux commands. So Over the Wire is wonderful for showing you all of those things that more experienced people might overlook just because it's so ingrained in them, right? I know that was a lot of examples. Like I said, those are just some of the topics that you can see. It can seem very overwhelming. I know that I was super overwhelmed when I first started, and it's just like, why would I try? I don't know any of this stuff. But I promise these are training opportunities. So if anything, there have been topics that I just researched for a couple of days just to learn something new about it. And I never get the question answered before the CTF is over, but it's nice to take the time and learn something new. So those are definitely things to keep in mind. Some of the statistics I talked about earlier, if you're interested in it, if you are on a team, just be very communicative with them. Let them know if you want to take hints, let them know if you're stuck. We always play off of each other's strengths when we form a team. I always ask the guys for help if I'm stuck on something, and vice versa. They'll ask me if they're stuck on something. Some CTFs do have limits on the number of times you can answer, so just keep that in mind in case you have some of the spam happy people that I have on my team. And keeping your skills sharp. So I mentioned Over the Wire. That's wonderful. Use Over the Wire for sure. D for Diva. If you have Twitter, follow her on Twitter. She is constantly posting free training resources. If you check out her website, she has so many resources on there. Like, I could never get to even half of them in my lifetime, and she divides them by free and paid too. So you can take advantage of the free resources she's got up there. Especially now that everyone's working from home and staying isolated, I could not even tell you how many free webinars and con talks, even this one right here that they're putting on. So many people are putting together talks on intro topics or very, very advanced topics. Most of them have been free. I don't think I've paid for a single one. So definitely take advantage of those because they will not stop just because we all start going back to the workforce. Also, Discord is very popular now. I know Slack was really big for a while there, but so many places have Discord servers where you can join and just kind of hang out and ask people questions. People are super nice in there. You can pop in and ask questions. They'll do live streams. I know Dave Kennedy, if any of you guys know him. Dave Kennedy hops into the Trusted Sec Discord very frequently. A lot of big name people in InfoSec are in there, and some small name people, like me and my nerdy friends, we hang out in there. So take advantage. I highly recommend joining Twitter for sure and following some of these people. People will spam out, upcoming events that they're participating in, talks that they're giving. there's a lot of resources to be found on Twitter for sure. And then the ultimate question is, where do you find these events, right? CTF time, they have 1,000 resources to include like calendars on types of events that are coming up. If I recall, they also break them into categories too. So you can see what type of CTF it is before you sign up. They also have write-ups that people have posted too. So what I do in my free time is sometimes I'll look up write-ups and see kind of the thought process people go through while they're doing CTFs. It really helps me kind of break out of maybe some silos I've put myself into. So definitely check that out. I can't recommend Twitter enough. Again, D for Diva's on there. She's wonderful. There are so many people I can shout out for sure. But definitely, if you're not on Twitter, at least just to creep and kind of follow people and see what they're up to, totally recommend it. And then friends and coworkers. We find a CTF and we put it into our personal Discord and we kind of show everyone and see if we can form a team. So that's a huge resource too. But that's the conclusion of the CTF 101. So I don't know, Amanda, if you wanted to get questions.
Thank you, Ashley. This is Vanessa. I have a couple of questions here that our viewers have asked. So one of them, you mentioned over the wire, but do you have any suggestions on where to start with CTFs? You know, if you're a beginner, do you have like a list of try these first before you move on to this other set of CTFs?
Yeah, I know you mentioned over the wire, and I did too. I would definitely try that one. CTF time does divide them into, I think they divide them into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So I would recommend checking out CTF time for those. Perfect.
Do you have any good resources for crypto challenges? One of our attendees says she always gets stuck on those, and sometimes the CTF will not let you move forward if you don't answer.
Yes, I have also fallen into the same trap, especially when they get really complicated. Pretty much anything more than I can plug into CyberChef, and I'm stuck for a little bit. I would check out the Krypton challenges on Over the Wire as well. Sometimes, I guess that's the downside to the time limit on a lot of these CTFs is they don't leave them up for a longer period of time than it takes to run. So I would personally start with the Over the Wire challenge, and you can even Google cryptography CTF write-up, and they'll give you some examples on them too.
Thank you. So we have one more question. This question is around the skills and knowledge needed to compete in CTFs. You mentioned Python. Is that something we should increase our knowledge of? Are there any other skills or things that we should know or practice?
So I'm going to be honest. Programming and Python is my weakest area overall by far. I can read programming languages. I have a really tough time writing them from scratch. So just from my own experience, I haven't actually needed a lot of programming languages. It will help you in the long run for sure. Like I tell myself every day, I'm going to sit down and learn it as soon as I'm done with the training pipeline for the job. It'll help you for sure. Is it necessary to start CTFs? Absolutely not. You can, like I said, have total beginner, never seen Linux before, and I hopped into some CTFs just to play around with them.
Our next question says, another excellent resource is CTF walkthroughs. I've used them. Do you have any other helpful walkthroughs or resources?
I do. I shared my website link earlier. I have some resources up there. There's a bunch of like GitHub write-ups. GitHub has a lot of CTF write-ups. So if you, like I said, you can Google pretty much any category that you think you're weak in, followed by a CTF walkthrough. And so many people post different write-ups that they've done from their competitions.
Thank you. And how do you pick your teammates for CTFs?
I'll be honest, we have a very small group of people that I hang out with at work. We kind of default to each other unless we're pretty busy. I haven't branched out a lot just because I'm kind of shy, so I haven't like picked some randos to play with or anything. So I tend to default to either people I'm at work with or friends that I have made since I retrained.
Thank you. And I believe we have gone through all of the questions that I got so far. I don't, if anybody has another question, we have a couple of minutes still for the presentation.